So, guys, I want to talk about the 48-hour film project. And, I feel it's time for me to just let it go. And I also want to say that it's not a bad competition. I've had some good experiences and I have some bad experiences. And then also, Mark Rupert, who's been the president of the competition, he's been very supportive of me. Um, the past couple of years when I've shared him, some self reflection about the competition, some things that have hurt me, and then just how I've also taken accountability. And I'm definitely very, very grateful for that. And I do feel that it's time for me to let it go because I was talking to one of my friends, John, and he was saying that, really it's become a shtick of me to kind of bash the competition because I had some bad experiences. And I'm going to Japan in a few days. That's my lifelong goal. And I really have to think about, the life I want to live. I think part of me doesn't want to be a filmmaker more anymore. The part of me just wants to be a writer. But I also understand that I've not given um, myself the best opportunities. I've not like pushed myself as much as I should really. I've been hurt by a lot of people and I've allowed that to keep me down really. But part of life is understand we had advantages and disadvantages. We have supportive people and we have assholes, but we got to move forward. We can't just kind of pussy when we want something. So I've kind of said the story many times that, I did the 40-hour film project from 2014 all the way to like 2022. And the last couple of years, I've thought about coming back, but I had a few bad experiences with the competition. I did it for one city, and the first year I went there, some of the city producers' friends were pointing their fingers at me and saying, "Hey, it's great that we got a black guy this year." And the city producer was snickering and chuckling, and they were saying some racist comments to me, like, Byron, why don't you want to work with other people? Is that black people work with black people and other things like that? I know I mentioned that another time I participated and there was a city producer that was really rude to me in a bunch of emails and gaslighting me and instigating me. And then another time I told an audience that my film was inspired by some PTSD I suffered. Like I worked at a job that was robbed by some security guards. When the cops came in, they aimed guns at me and they were snickering. And my boss was laughing about how I was almost murdered by the police, really. So I shared that with an audience to say all those pain, all those really hurtful feelings, all that, survival skill and trauma that's influencing my writing. But I lost control of my emotions. I spoke inappropriately. I spoke very offensively. People walked out and they were very upset with me. So even though I was even though the C producers, they were snickering, they're making sarcastic gasping sounds, they were playing on their phones, and they were being really really disrespectful. I put myself in that vulnerable situation. I lost control of my emotions. I heard voices in my head give me some bad advice by saying, "Hey, you know what? You should just keep on going because you're angry. You should keep on going because you've already done like 13, 14, 40 hour film projects. You're entitled to monopolize everything." Or you're entitled to say, "Hey, everybody, this is my blood, sweat, and tears. I've gone through traumatic experiences. I have every right to say what I want to say, really." And sometimes when we have voices in our head that tell us we have a good conscience and a bad conscience, we're still accountable. We're still accountable for following a dark philosophy. And I ultimately learned a lot of things about, respect for other people participating. I also learned that sometimes when you share a story, say, "Hey, you know what? This hurtful thing inspired me to be a filmmaker or to write stories or to push myself." If you do it in an antisocial way, don't expect people to respect your very sensitive story. And I also will mention, the other big part of it was that I've spoken very badly about the city producer who behaved that way during the event, especially because there were other years where I participated in the 48-hour film project and they were instigating me and they were upsetting me. So I spent so much time on kind of debating in my head, am I accountable or am I not accountable? Because I think when I was younger, I said, well, people instigate you, you're not accountable because they upset you. And then I had to learn the hard way. There's responsibility on both sides, you know. And then I also had to learn too that that, as my friend John was saying, that the 4 Hour Film Project is not a professional competition. It's more about like having a fun weekend, quote unquote. And then also the other part of it is that it's not a big organization. It's just a bunch of amateurs. It's an amateur organization. It's not that professional. And if you think about it, making a film in a weekend is something you do, maybe in high school, or maybe your first 1 or 2 years in college. But if you really want to be a real filmmaker and spend a couple of months on a project or a couple of weekends, that's something you do as like a senior in college or a BFA. And maybe if you're trying to get a doctorate in film, or um, like maybe a master's final, you may have to spend a couple of months on a project. Like ultimately, what do you expect when you invest into the 40 hour film project? You should not expect so much for them, because they don't real there's it's not really about having a standard, in my opinion. um in my opinion, really. If you, and a lot of people will say that as well, really, because honestly, it's just, making a film in a weekend and rushing through it, and understanding that some people get to have advantages, unfair advantages. Like some people will cheat, some people are friends with city producers, and some people, it may be something where somebody does a couple of commercials at a couple of different places, or at a couple of different sports gyms. So maybe the city producer will be like, hey, since I know you have connections with different sports gyms, we're going to make sure the genre and the special character is a gym because you have advantages. Like they'll try to make things to certain people's advantages and stuff like that, really. But what do you expect from the competition? I think that's another big thing. But I also feel that another part of it is that, I've been upset with the competition. I've been very hurt by it. And there was a certain point where me and Mark were talking a bit. And I think that one bad thing was that he's been very supportive and he's been very helpful to me. And I kind of looked at it as I was so wounded that it's almost like, imagine somebody has an illness in a hospital and they are taking medication that's slowly getting them better, or like therapy, like you're slowly, slowly, slowly improving. That's how I looked at it for a long, long time. And then I kind of told myself, after watching an episode of My 600 Pound Life, it's kind of like Mark Rupert is almost like a father that is making up for me having a bad childhood. And sometimes when people are in that role, it's almost like, yeah, maybe I had bad experiences in the 48. Yeah, I may have had but just like people have bad experiences in their childhood. And then when people become adults and they're bitching about their past, or they're bitching about past experiences, sometimes the person on the other side is gonna tolerate it. And I think Mark has kind of tolerated a lot for me, because honestly, we've been talking like for 4 or 5 years about my experience, my pain, my wounds, and ultimately, it's time for me to say I can't treat him like a father that's saying I'll be there for you, so emotionally, because you are hurting from this shit. Because ultimately it holds me back and it's my fault. It's saying that I can't get up, I got a pussy, I got to do other things like that. Filmmaking has good people and it has some really, really shitty people. That's every industry. Nothing nothing is worth having unless you struggle, unless there's an obstacle. Um, so what happened was, like, the reason why we came into contact was because there was a city producer that I had issue with, and then had issue with, and what happened was, um, I kept like talking badly about her, and I was struggling in my brain. I think on one side I just wanted to say, hey, I want attention from the 40, to say, hey, she should be punished, she should apologize to me. On the other side, I said I need to understand that I've misbehaved, or they instigated me and I misbehaved. I need to be accountable on one side, and one side was like, I want to hold peace with this. I want to make peace with this person, feel like I can do their film festival because they're in the city that I live. And I kind of had to learn, what, I got to pick a lane. I got to say, hey, this is what I want with this city producer who I have an issue with, and stick to that. And I learned a lot of things about that. That sometimes when you're upset about something, you have to make a plan and say, how am I going to move forward? how am I going to move forward from this, and not really debate in your head and not really just act out of emotions. And that was my issue too, because I know on one side I was talking bad about the city producer a lot. On another side, I was sending them emails about things that I learned. On another side, I was very remorseful. On another side, I was telling other city producers, oh, well, what a crappy person this is. So, yeah, and also I understand, it's still harassment in the end of the day, and that's not right, really. I did harass the city producer, and for I harassed the 48 with trying to talk about how bad my experience was and how badly they treat me, and that's not right, really. That's part of one of the reasons why I got to get over this, is because you know what? Even though they did hurtful things to me, even though the city producer did hurtful things to me, talking about it much longer, expecting Mark Rupert to hear my pain over and over, that's kind of harassment. And that's also kind of pathetic because there's more I can achieve. And my friend John just reminded me of that. So another big problem that happened was this city producer, they were on statewide television in their state for doing wrongdoing at their job and discrimination and workplace bullying and reporting people to the federal government and writing notes on their paperwork like happy hunting and extorting people out of money. And when there was a report in one of the newspapers that when the city producer left their job, they were whooping and cheering and saying, you know what, um, I did nothing wrong. And then there's another article with this person, well, he or she, his or her, smiling for the camera and grinning while all that stuff was coming out about them. And there were some people commenting saying like, okay, well, this person's despicable, he or she is despicable, and then it shows like a white privilege and other things like that. And then there's some other people saying different, it's a state job, so obviously play the system, whatever. But what happened was that I saw on Facebook that what happened was that all the stuff about this person came out on the news. But a few months before that, this person stepped down from being a state producer of the 4 Hour Film Project. This is the person I had issues with. So I kind of said to myself, that's kind of strange. Why is this person stepping down when they've committed to a lot of years? I typed in their name, I saw the articles. And then what happened was, which is very concerning, is after I've told Mark about what happened with this person, after Mark and I have been talking for a while, I saw on Facebook that they had an event. He went down to give this person a Lifetime Achievement Award after all this crap that's all this exposure that this person did racism, all this like, hey, this person was on statewide television for being a racist. And I hate even saying this, that the new city producer for that city is black and Latino, I heard. So it's almost like you're getting a token minority because you're saying, oh, well, this white person got in trouble for this shit. And now we're replacing that person with a token minority, really. And I've actually told one of my friends, JV, about it. And JV is a black man and he does a lot of civil rights stuff. And he wanted me to work on one of his projects, which was about like, Trayvon, which is kind of inspired by Trayvon Martin. So he stepped away because he kind of learned, okay, the reason why they're reaching out to him is because they need a couple of black people every single year in the community, in the 48, to look good. And he kind of saying no because he knew his role, really. He kind of said, no, I'm not doing it because why would I want to be involved in that shit? When the former city producer was a racist, when the former city producer was like saying things like, her favorite director is Spike Lee or Black Lives Matter, and posing with taking pictures with him and everything like that, really. Oh, well, we see how fake this person is, really. But it says something when after all that shit, the president of the competition is willing to drive all the way from Washington, D.C. to that city, a few hundred miles to give them an award and do a ceremony for them. That says a lot about either he didn't know, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, or maybe he did know and he probably was like, okay, we're doing the ceremony, not a lot of people will know about it, we're going to be a little sneaky with it. And that's, and if that's true, that's horrible. And, he's an asshole for doing that. The definition of an asshole is a person who goes through life hurting other people and not taking any accountability. Mind you, I am an asshole for how I treat the 40 Hour Film Project. I've been an asshole to how I've been treating Mark Rupert and the former city producer and other people. I've been an asshole to the competition. I've been an asshole to myself, really, because I've been kind of stuck on it. I've not given filmmaking my best, really. I've been an asshole to a lot of my friends by treating them like therapists with all these emotional issues, really. So a few days ago, I decided to report this to the Better Business Bureau because even though that event and that giving that person that honor happened a couple of years ago, I said to myself there was a voice in my head that said you need to bring this forward because this hurts. I want the pain to end. So I contacted the Better Business Bureau. I think on Monday, then on Tuesday, I got an email from one of the people in the 48, and they said that they're very hurt that I did that, that they apologized, and they did apologize to me, and they kindly asked me to withdraw my complaint, really. But I chose not to. I said that I dealt with racism and discrimination in the 48, that the city producer, I mentioned their name, got in trouble for was on statewide television for racism, discrimination, extortion, and other things like that. And the president of the 48 was willing to go out of his way to give them an award behind people's backs and did a ceremony for that person. So it does talk about questionable ethics, And I think one thing that was wrong about it is I should have said whether or not. I kind of made it known as, okay, well, this event was probably months after this person was on television, really. So maybe he knew, but you don't assume somebody knows something. But if he didn't know, I apologize. If he didn't know, that's wrong, really, because again, there, I worked at a job and I was sexually harassed by my coworker DJ. Like he was showing up to work drunk. He exposed his penis. He was peeing by dumpsters. He was masturbating himself. And imagine if he works at a state college. So imagine if the governor of that state and the president of the college of that state decided to throw him an award, to throw him a lifetime achievement when he retires, really. How do you think I would feel if I spoke out and there's some talk about, this guy? It's the same exact thing, really. If you're going to go out of your way to celebrate somebody with such a controversy, I think it's kind of important to share that because it also says, how do you, I'm mixed race and I received a lot of racism because I look African American. What does it say about your competition if you're gonna if they celebrate a racist? What does it say about me when I talk about a lot of anti-black comments that were made to me and then you do this shit? What does it say about every single time I send emails to people in the 48 about racism? They've never, ever, ever, even the top people especially, they've never, ever, ever said anything about that. They get tone deaf. It's not a good look. And then ultimately, too, I know that I'm hypocritical. I do Black Fatigue on my channel. I'll mention this. I was bullied by a lot of African Americans in my life. I've almost been killed by a bunch of African Americans. A lot of PTSD experiences that have happened to me have been by African Americans. My biological mother, who almost killed me, my older brother, and a couple of other of her children, was part Native American, part Black. And there was a point in my life I became anti-Black because of a lot of shit that happened to me when I was a teenager for 3 or 4 years. But I've had to learn just because I meet a bunch of shitty Black people does not mean they're all shitty. For example, this is a black pen. So if I'm writing and the pen explodes, should I hate black? Should I hate the color black because black ink is all over my hand? This is a blue pen. Same thing. If I'm writing and then this pen explodes and I have blue ink all over me, should I hate the color blue? That's the same thing about Black people, white people, Asian people, any other races. We should not hate people because we have bad experiences with them. Sometimes you may consistently run into people of a certain group who are bad, and that's just bad luck, really. It's true. But there's also something called culture. Yes, there is things in Black culture that encourage people to be who are Black to be indignant, like the rap and the gangster rap and the single mother and media showing Black people as rude, impatient, violent, foul mouthed, and other things like that. That has an impact on Black culture. But again, there's some people who rise above all that and says, "Hey, I'm not gonna imitate what I see on television." That's also very true in white culture. There's a lot of shows, or there's a lot of people on YouTube or Facebook. Like I think her name was Alina or something like that. Where it's just like this like girl who's white and she kind of just disrespects her mother all the time. And then also you look at other communities as well, really. You know, like I'm going to Japan. Japan's a very, very sexist culture. You look at any single time you watch a Japanese anime, a lot of women characters have big boobs, a lot of them have panties. A lot of like the humor is trying to look up a girl's skirt, really, in a lot of anime or whatever, really. You know, so obviously every group of people, there's certain people who abide by stereotypes and there's certain people who don't. But you should not hate a group of people. You should not hate a race because you consistently run into people who are stereotypes or who are negative, really. And that's what I had to learn. But so I'm not perfect when it's come to race relations. I understand that it's unfortunate that the city producer who stepped down. It also said in the article that they had a pattern of saying anti-Indian things. They have had a pattern of racism. It also says a lot that if the president of the competition knew, and that's an allegation, if he knew, that's very, very bad. And if he did not know, it's still a very, very bad look, really. But it kind of encapsulates what I've said about the 48, that it's an amateur competition. It's just picking people, throwing people together who to do things in the organization, and there's consequence for that. But I think, in my opinion, when I've dealt with racism and other shit like that, and the higher ups saying nothing about it, it's time for me to go, really. But I also feel that another thing about it is, importantly, is to also say to myself, hey, you know what? I'm not getting a lot of things out of this. This is holding me back. And then also, as I said, that Mark Rupert is the president of competition. This is basically like a fundraiser. He is in king. It's his job to encourage people. It's his job to run events and really just run his kingdom. Really, he is not a psychiatrist. He is not my father. And I can't treat him like a surrogate father or like or a father of a victim, really. So I need to stop being a victim. I need to go forward. I need to be productive. I need to not just shit on the 48-hour film project on this channel, really. Because honestly, it gets to a point of like, what the fuck, really? It gets to a point of, stop being a little bitch. Stop being a pussy, Byron. I need to kind of just let this thing go. It's completely my fault for holding on to it too long. And I also, one of the reasons why I kind of misbehaved or held on for too long is because I was kind of expecting an apology from the people that hurt me. I was expecting them to kind of grow and realize. I also told myself, too, that I do not want to be successful because that way they win. They're like, oh, well, things worked out for you either way. But no, I got to be proud of my own success. And even if somebody else is like has that mentality, then I don't care, really. I'm more about it. I want my dreams to come true. I'm going to Japan, really. So what should I say? Oh, well, I don't want to go because I want everybody to know that I'm sad and hurt, and I'm going to do something that's sad and hurtful to me to show other people that I'm hurting. I'm still hurting from how other people treat me. I want the people who hurt me to feel sadness because of what they did to me. So I'm going to sabotage myself to show that sadness. Really, no, that's not what I should do. Really, I mean, I have a lot of really growing up to do, and part of it has to be letting the 48 goal go. And if I want to be a writer, I want to be a writer. If I want to be a filmmaker, I want to be a filmmaker. I need to be careful about the people that I trust. I need to kind of say, hey, if a lot of people are saying something's unprofessional, or my friend John told me years ago that he had friends who had their lives ruined by putting too much in the 48, really, it is what it is, really. As I said, it's not bad competition. There's problems in every single competition. I had bad experiences. It's time for me to grow up and let it the fuck go.